Gather round, children, and I'll read you a story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Tabitha. She and her family lived in a typical American home. There was a mother, Samantha, a father, Darren, little Tabitha, and her brother, Adam. As Tabitha grew older, her parents discovered that she was a gifted child. Quite gifted. But wisely, they didn't pay a lot of attention to that, and Tabitha grew up just right, with pigtails and freckles. Just like any other typical American girl. Almost.
Some people got it, some people don't. You'll never know until you try. You never know, baby, you can't fly if you try. It could be magic, the way I see. Could be magic, but it feels so real. It could be magic, ooh yeah. Well, it could be magic. It could be magic.
Welcome back to Twitch Talk. I'm Mark Simpson. I'm the producer of the Bewitched Fanfare events, and our next event is scheduled for May 6th through 8th in Salem, Massachusetts. You can get all the information at bewitchedfanfare.com. Tonight we're going to be doing something special for our season finale, and we're going to talk about the Bewitched spin-off series Tabitha, starring Lisa Hartman. And I'm going to start off reading the official Columbia Pictures Television concept. Tabitha, a half-hour romantic fantasy comedy series about a young, inquisitive female witch who enjoys leading a normal mortal life, attempting to keep her witchcraft to a minimum. Tabitha is the story of what is happening to the bewitching Samantha's daughter now that she's grown up. It's 1977, and Tabitha is now 22. She's a lovely, high-spirited, and endowed witch with her mother's powers. She works as a production assistant on a late-night interview program, The Paul Thurston Show, at a Los Angeles television station. The differences between Tabitha and Bewitched are as marked as the differences between 1963 and 1977. Tabitha is single, liberated, and more sophisticated than a television witch would have been 14 years ago. Executive producer Jerry Mayer wrote the pilot script of Tabitha, and Robert Stambler produces the series with Bruce Bilson directing the pilot. Tabitha is a Columbia Pictures television production. So let's check in with David, and he's going to go over the broadcast history.
Thank you, Mark. I'm David Pierce, author of the Bewitched History book, which is on sale now for 21% off until February 10th when you go to bearmanormedia.com, and there's no promo code necessary. It just automatically comes off. The pilot aired on ABC on Saturday, May 7th, 1977 at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific to decent ratings and was added to the 1977-78 fall schedule. The second episode, Tabitha's Weighty Problem, aired on Saturday, September 10th, 1977 at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. For the following 2 months, Fish, starring Abe Vigoda, aired in that time slot, and the next episode of Tabitha did not air until Saturday, November 12th, 1977. After that, it ran regularly except for a preemption on December 3rd, 1977 for the Christmas special Frosty's Winter Wonderland until the final episode, Tabitha's Party, was broadcast on Saturday, January 14th, 1978. 2 episodes were broadcast on New Year's Eve, December 31st, What's Wrong with Mr. Right and That New Black Magic in the 8 to 9 p.m. time slot. With little promotion by ABC, the series received dismal ratings and was canceled, ranking 81st out of 104 programs for the 1977-78 season. It was the second lowest rated show on the ABC network. 9 episodes were rebroadcast during July and August of 1978, Fridays, at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. And now, for the whole mess of continuity issues, take it away, Mike.
All right, we've got a whole series to work with. I am Adam Michael James, author of the Bewitched Continuum. I, Samantha Take This Mortal Darren, and Samantha's 70s. And we're gonna just cover the basics here because I'm sure we're gonna talk about a lot of this stuff as we go through the episodes. But the first thing that I think even was an issue at the time is that there was no way that Tabitha could be in her 20s. As she was born on screen in 1966, she would have only been 11, so they did what we call soap opera rapid aging syndrome. And so there's that was one of the big ones. They said in the pilot that Adam was the older sibling, which he was not. They also said that he was mortal, which he was not, as proven by Adam Warlock or Washout in 8th season. Adam is criminally underused, but we'll get to that later. Minerva, Tabitha has an aunt Minerva. That's not possible unless she's like a great aunt, because as far as we know, Samantha doesn't have any siblings. So it's just not possible for Tabitha to have an aunt. And the other thing that I want to say is that the relationship between Tabitha and her boss, Paul Thurston, is really inconsistent. It's like sometimes they're flirting, sometimes they're dating, sometimes they're seeing other people. It seemed like the show didn't really know where to go with them, which is a shame because they seem to be getting set up as the Samantha Darren equivalent in the show, and it just never really crystallized. There's a lot more than that, but I'm going to keep it short so we can get to the episodes. Back to you, Mark.
All right, thanks, Mike. So now what we're going to do is each of us has been assigned an episode. I'm going to read the TV guide description of each episode, and then you're each going to have 3 minutes to talk about your episode and give us your thoughts, a little bit of a synopsis, I guess, of the plot of the episode. And then if anyone else has anything that they want to add afterwards, then we can do that. But we're going to start with the first episode, which is simply called The Pilot. Lisa Hartman stars as Tabitha, the grown-up daughter of Samantha on Bewitched, now working for a TV talk show host who's not exactly enchanted about booking an ecology writer. And Taylor, this one was assigned to you, so take it away.
Okay. Tabitha grew up, and she got sexy, and she's a production assistant at KXLA with her now older brother, Adam, a muggle mortal with a chocolate allergy. Paul is the chauvinistic, vapid host of a gotcha-style talk show / news program / also has a weather segment. When Kissinger drops the show as the guest, they recommend, well, what is Billy Carter up to? What's he doing? Well, he's doing Mary Hartman. And I am so glad I got to talk about the pilot because I love this joke. Not only because it's a reference to Norman Lear's very popular show at the time, but it's also a wink, wink, nod, nod to Lisa Hartman in her last name. And I would say, so when you're thinking about the series overall, the pilot needs to do a good job of introducing all of the characters and telling us their stories without it feeling like a series of introductions. And this show has a bit of a leg up because we already know most of the characters, or they assume that we're familiar with the characters. So I think it actually does a pretty good job of introducing the new characters in the show. I think it does a good job of that. The series is kind of Mary Tyler Moore meets Bewitched. And, with a softcore pornography angle thrown in to pay homage to Fred Silverman's jiggle television of the 1970s. That was what the back half of the 70s was called, because of all those shows where women jiggled, I guess. They also called it TNA TV. Very offensive name, just as an offensive production strategy. And so when I'm watching the first episode, essentially it feels a little bit like a workplace sexual harassment training video, right? I mean, this is everything that you do not do to women in the workplace. It's a little disconcerting. So in the first episode, she's dating this young guy, and essentially he's just introduced as a problem. We freeze him, he stays frozen the whole episode, he goes away. Not much of a compelling plot, I don't think, for a pilot. but it would have been an easy sell, built-in audience. You know, the reason that we see so many reruns and spin-offs today is because we don't want to have to try and court a new audience every time we create a new product. And so that would have been the appeal for Bewitched. I wish there was more magic. I wish there was a little more glamour, and I wish there was a lot less sexual harassment. But so it goes, I guess. And the first episode, I think, is actually one of the less interesting episodes in the season. But I think if it does one thing well, it introduces the characters well.
Does anyone have anything that they want to add about this episode?
I just thought it was really interesting after he was done being frozen that he was actually cold. I feel like the only time we saw that in Bewitched was when Darren went into the mirror. Like, that didn't happen when time froze before, and I thought that was a really interesting choice.
Barry Van Dyke played her boyfriend, and they got rid of Barry Van Dyke after the pilot because they wanted that kind of sexual tension that I think that they were going for between Tabitha and Paul Thurston. And when Minerva shows up, it's like she hadn't seen them in a long time. And my theory about Minerva is, I don't think Endora was her mother. I think she was like a love child of Maurice. That later they discovered.
That's good headcanon. I like that. That's a good headcanon.
I don't know.
You should have written for the show.
Maurice and Abigail Beecham or something, had this love child or something. And I think that's and we'll, as we go through and we talk about some of the other episodes, some of the stuff that happens in some of the other episodes, I think that we've got a huge gap of time supposedly, where it was actually only 3 years when they came up with the concept, the original concept. It was 1975, and it was only 3 years after Bewitched ended. So, but she's supposed to be 22 years old, so there's supposed to be this whole gap of time. So I'm looking at it that way. It's like, in this gap of time, one of the things they find out is that Maurice had another daughter that they didn't know about, and that's Minerva. That's the only way I can justify Minerva. Oh, I should have mentioned at the pilot that it was written by Jerry Mayer and directed by Bruce Bilson. Jerry Mayer was also the creator, and he was also a writer on Bewitched. He wrote 5 episodes of Bewitched. And he also wrote the second episode, Tabitha's Weighty Problem, which was broadcast on September 10th, 1977. It was written by Jerry Mayer, directed by Charles S. Dubin. And the TV guide description simply says a Russian weightlifter pays amorous attention to Tabitha. That's all that the description says, but there's more to the episode than that. The basic thing about the episode is that they are hosting KXLA, or Paul Thurston is like hosting a Russian or a weightlifting competition for ABC's Wide World of Sports, and Tabitha is assigned to entertain this Russian weightlifter, but she comes down with a cold, and that's an interesting thing that they state. And she mentions her mother. Witches don't get colds. I've never had a cold. My mother never had a cold. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But when she sneezes, weird stuff kind of happens, a la Esmeralda, I guess. But that's basically what the episode is. She's sick and she's losing control of her powers, and insanity ensues. Not one of my favorites. I don't think that this was a very good episode. And I think there were more, as John always mentions about the sound effects. There were, in the second episode, there were several sound effects from Bewitched that they used. That's really, it just wasn't. It was okay, but I just didn't think it was a great episode. So that's kind of all I really have to say about this one that I can think of.
Well, I have something to say about it. So this marks the return of Dr. Bombay.
Yes.
which
How'd I miss that?
I know, I was like, come on, Mark. But it was really cool that he came back, and this was his actual first appearance, and then I'm going to talk about his second when we get to the last episode.
I did kind of like the where he turns into Harpo Marx. That was kind of that weird horn, and then she says, "I feel like I'm being examined by Harpo Marx," and then she sneaks and he turns into Harpo Marx. That was kind of cute. They did reference like when she first. I mean, obviously he didn't know when he first popped in. He didn't know who she was, and she had to remind him. It's like, don't you remember me? I'm Tabitha Stevens. Oh yes, Samantha's little wiggler is what he called it. And so I thought that was kind of neat that they did that. Okay, let's move on to episode number 3, which is the Halloween show, and Max is going to take this one. It was originally broadcast on November 12th, 1977. Again, this one was also written by Jerry Mayer and directed by Charles Rondo. And the description is, Paul's mockery of witchcraft on the station's Halloween show draws vengeance from Witch Mountain. So take it away, Max.
Okay, so for me, this is when it starts to get good, if I'm honest. I didn't like the first 2 episodes at all. I was quite disappointed in them. So, as already mentioned, Paul makes derogatory remarks about witches and whether they exist or not. And this is watched by Aunt Minerva and Cassandra, who we find out to be the head of the Witches' Coven, another one. And then Cassandra decides she's going to teach him a lesson by sending a hit witch. Now, I don't remember a hit witch being in Bewitched. We've had a similar concept before, but I don't remember that, but I thought it was quite interesting. I mean, the hit witch is in the form of a little girl who is 7 years old. Because really, this hit witch is a witch that never grows up, which I thought was quite kind of neat. And she is in fact 92 years old, so she has been in the form of a 7-year-old girl for 85 years. Bizarre, but true. And she turns up, which I find really bizarre, that she turns up as a 7-year-old, claiming to be the goddaughter of this man who's never ever seen her before. There's no one with her except she's got a suitcase. I think that's really weird. And she just wreaks havoc in his life by causing magic, but in a really neat way by just stamping her feet like a child would. I thought that was quite cool. I mean, Tabitha is not bewitched at all, as we all know. What I'm going to say is I really like the idea that the Cassandra witch, played by the brilliant Mary Wicks, who's famous for Sister Mary Lazarus in Sister Act, her scenes with Aunt Minerva reminded me of Endora and Serena when they used to like try and be in cahoots together to try and destroy Sam and Darren's marriage. I thought the actress that played Paula, the hit witch, was really, really funny. She did make me laugh. I think it's the first time I laughed out loud in any of the first 3 episodes. Sorry, but that's true. How it ends, which is really nice. There's this lovely scene where Tabitha and Paula, the hit witch. I don't think Paula's a very witch name, but never mind. They have this lovely, heartfelt, and encouraging discussion about, how it would be actually if you let life, take you and grow up, everything you've missed. I thought that was quite nice. But I have to say, Lisa Hartman, I think is really, really good, and she was perfectly cast for this because I would close my eyes sometimes and I could hear Elizabeth Montgomery. I mean, there was only one Elizabeth Montgomery, obviously, but there are little bits I think, I can hear her saying that, and even some of her mannerisms are exactly the same. So I thought it was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any other thoughts about the Halloween show?
It hadn't registered on me that she was stamping her foot like a little kid. I just thought, I don't know, I thought like maybe that was something the child actress did, but I loved that she had her own sound effect, like Samantha did in Bewitched, and I just thought she was hilarious. So, yeah. When they said she'd been driving her parents crazy for 78 years, it was a great line. Yeah,
now this was actually the first one that I saw, and as David had said in the broadcast history, they showed the one episode in September, and then they didn't show another one until 2 months later in November. And this was the first one that I had seen. And I didn't know who Lisa Hartman was until I saw this. And the first thing that popped onto the screen when they broadcast this was she did a special intro as Tabitha, announcing the episode, and she referred to it as the post-Halloween pre-Thanksgiving special. I'll never forget that. I wish I could find that. But I think it's a really good one. I think it's a really good one. She talks about her mother, and then Dick Wilson, as they called him Mr. Green in this one, but he had a variety of names when he was the drunk on Bewitched, but he's Mr. Green, and he was, it was great to see him. And I really like this one. Mary Wicks, oh my God, what can you can't say enough about Mary Wicks. I mean, I was always surprised that Mary Wicks was not on Bewitched, because she was on all the Screen Gem shows, but she was awesome. And like Max said, her scenes with Karen Morrow, they're just brilliant. Like at the beginning there, when Minerva, they highlight the fact in this one that Minerva loves to eat, and she's got the cookie, and she burns the cookie, and she's nice and crisp. It's hilarious. I just love it. So we're going to move on to episode number 4, which is A Star Is Born. And Susan, this is your episode. It was originally broadcast on November 19th, 1977. It was, the story was by Roland Walpert, who was also a writer for Bewitched. And the teleplay was written by him and Bernie Kahn, who also was a Bewitched writer. And it was directed by Charles Rondeau. And the description: Minerva makes a TV weather girl miss airtime, leaving Tabitha to take her place.
Okay. So the backstory on the episode is that Tabitha is not getting the attention from Paul that Minerva wants her to get, because there's a new weather girl that's getting all the attention. She's bossing Tabitha around and telling her what she needs to do for her, sign her autographs and so forth. And that really irks Minerva. So she works to get, hold up Wanda, the weather girl, on her first day, so that they have to call on Tabitha and employ her to be the weather girl. And the whole point, though, is to make her a star, and bottom line is to get her with Paul. I mean, that's one thing about Tabitha that kind of bugs me, is that seems like that is the mission statement of the series, whereas, Bewitched, we've talked about that a lot, that it had a really noble mission statement. The mission statement of Tabitha seems to get Tabitha a husband, and I think that's kind of strange, because in the 70s, it was the time of I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. Women were going back to work, getting more independence. And here, even though Tabitha has her job and she's out, not a housewife, Minerva's whole MO is to get her married to somebody, preferably Paul. Anyway, that's my thought on this. Cliff Norton, who does the voiceover for the intro of Tabitha and was in Bewitched several times, has a guest appearance in this episode. He plays the husband of a guest at the restaurant that Tabitha and Paul go to, and also Tabitha and Minerva. They go to this restaurant twice. Jean Wilson, who later was credited as Jeannie Wilson, played the weather girl, and you may remember her from Santa Barbara and Simon & Simon in the 80s. She had a pretty big role in Simon & Simon. But the one that's the most fun, I had the most fun researching, was Fritz Feld, who plays the maitre d' at the restaurant. But we know him from Bewitched as Maestro Ferranini in Samantha at the Keyboard. He does his trademark. Two things that date this episode to the 70s very firmly are a reference to Charlie's Angels, when they asked Tabitha to wear her sexy weather girl outfit, which all of you who are dressed in KXLA, that's what Tabitha wears when she gets the part, and they want her to look sexier. So she wears that shirt and little bitty tiny shorts. But the fun part of it was the magic. And the one thing that's refreshing to me about Tabitha from Bewitched is that she feels free to use her magic when she wants. She's not really holding back. And that's a relief because, a lot of times during Bewitched, you just feel so frustrated. If only she would do this or only she would do that, then she wouldn't have all this trouble. So that was refreshing that she and Minerva were using their magic willy-nilly. It was a good episode. I enjoyed it, except for the sex stuff. Maybe I'm a prude. I don't know.
One thing you missed, the wife, Cliff. You talked about Cliff Norton, but the wife was Hollis Irving, and she played in season 1, 2 season 1 episodes. She
missed that.
Yeah, Shirley Clyde and June Foster. She was. Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on this one?
All right.
Okay, so let's move on to episode number 5. And this is Minerva Goes Straight. And this is John. This episode was broadcast on November 26, 1977. It was written by Jerry Mayer and directed by Charles Rondo. At Tabitha's urging, Minerva adopts the mortal life, then falls for a ski instructor. So, John, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. So this episode starts off with Minerva trying to get away from a suitor who was chasing after him, and he had exact replicas of, I believe, I can't remember the pianist's name, but he had exact replicas zapped into his hands, and she just was done with warlocks at that point. And so Tabitha suggested, well, maybe you might want to give mortal men a try at this point. So at her urging, she was like, okay, well, let me consider that. So she started to try the mortal lifestyle. So this episode had a really close tie to Bewitched in that it was kind of a sort of a remake of Marriage Witches style, where Serena was to try the mortal lifestyle, except without the computerized dating. So part of the episode switches over to a ski chalet where they all go away on a nice weekend, and they meet a ski instructor, Jean-Claude, and Minerva, immediately falls for him, and the episode kind of wraps around her chasing after Jean-Claude, but Jean-Claude definitely has a wandering eye to any female that comes along in that episode, and basically ends up kind of really blowing off Minerva for a younger, prettier thing. And then it's interesting in the episode, Tabitha wants to put Minerva on his mind, on Jean-Claude's mind, so she reaches out to Powers on High, and she says, I'm not really good at incantations, and it brought up a really good thought to me that throughout the series, Tabitha really didn't do many, or I can't really recall her doing incantations in the series. So it was kind of an interesting thing. Richard Libertini played Jean-Claude, and in the very end, she drove Jean-Claude crazy, and Minerva decides, you know what, I'm going to go back to the warlock lifestyle. So I thought this was a great episode. This is one of the very first episodes as a 13-year-old boy that I recorded off of the television set using a microphone and a cassette player, and I used to listen to it over and over and over. Another really cool thing about this episode, and Mark pointed this out, and I went back several times and looked, and it is 100% on. There's a huge tie to the original Bewitched episodes, and that's the stairs that are in the ski lodge are the stairs that were in the Bewitched house. So there's several different scenes where you can see it from different angles, and you can absolutely tell.
All right, anybody else on this one? I'm glad you mentioned about the staircase, John, because if you hadn't, I was
You
going
would have
to.
murdered me.
No, I was going to bring it up. Let's move on to the next episode, number 6, Mr. Nice Guy, and Robert's going to take this one. It was broadcast on December 10th, 1977, and was written by Martin Donovan and again directed by Charles Rondo. When Minerva transforms Paul's acid tongue into one of honey, his TV career goes south. So, take it away, Robert.
Thank you. I think we Twitch talkers especially love Tabitha because we adore Bewitched and we wanted Bewitched to go on forever. I had a yellow Volkswagen Beetle as a teenager. That was my first car. Not a cool convertible like Tabitha had. And LISA HARTMAN BLACK, to this day, she has an amazing voice. Sang the theme song, It Could Be Magic. She's beautiful and completely believable as the grown-up Miss Stevens. Karen Morrow as Aunt Minerva was terrific, kind of Uncle Arthur and Endora and Serena rolled into one character. So the plot, quickly. Tabitha admits to Aunt Minerva that she likes Paul, but she thinks he's too conceited and arrogant. So Minerva puts a niceness spell on him, and every time he looks in a mirror, he's sweet as pie for exactly 1 hour. The super niceness theme was used in the Bewitched series as well on a few occasions. There was one scene in Mr. Nice Guy that did shock me a bit. Paul and Tabitha are alone in her bedroom, and Minerva zaps a very revealing blue light on Tabitha. Very short, very, while Tabitha accidentally gets pushed onto the bed by Paul. Not so racy by today's standards, maybe, but I'd say pretty daring for prime time in the late 70s. Billy Hayes had a great cameo in this episode as a nun, Sister Rosalind. I'm sure you all remember her as a staple of 70s Saturday morning television. She played Witchy Pooh on HR Pufnstuf and the Genie in Lidsville. She also appeared as Hansel and Gretel's witch in the Bewitched episode. So just a few general notes in closing. I thought it was great that they carried over some of the spell casting sound effects and nose twitching from Bewitched. But I thought Tabitha was written as a real goody-goody, and as a child, she had a very mischievous streak, probably inherited from her grandmother, turning playmates into bulldogs and butterflies, and playing hide-and-seek by transforming herself into a raisin cookie. So I think I would have liked to have seen a little more of that carried over into Tabitha. So anyway, that's my time. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody have anything they want to say about this? No? Nothing? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break here, and then we'll come back and we'll do the next 6 episodes. So we'll be right back.
Samantha's 70s. Hustle on over to Amazon and zap up your copy today.
All right, well, welcome back. And before we move on, we're going to announce the winner of our Twitch Talk season finale Tabitha contest. And again, the winner will receive this DVD set of Tabitha, the complete series. So David is actually going to draw the name of the winner, and all of the names are here in this martini glass. So I'm going to zap this over to David, and he will announce the winner. So David, here it comes.
Awesome. So, who's it gonna be? And the winner is Roger Scales of Billerica, Massachusetts. Woo! Yay, Roger! Congratulations!
Yay, Roger!
Roger, you are the winner of the Tabitha
Roger!
set. So we will be in touch with you to get your address, and it will be coming to you in the mail. To learn more about the Tabitha TV series, visit tabithatheseries.com. And for the latest information on Twitch Talk, visit twitchtalktv.com. In 1975, just a mere 3 years after Bewitched completed its successful 8-season run, the ABC television network approached Columbia Pictures Television, who approached producer William Asher, about a pilot for a new series about Samantha's now grown-up daughter Tabitha, in an attempt to rekindle the magic. Broadcast on the network on April 24, 1976, Tabitha, reflecting the original spelling of the character's name, focused on a now 20-something Tabitha Stevens working as an editorial assistant at fictional Trend magazine in San Francisco. Attempting to live the mortal life like her mother, Tabitha, played by brunette Liberty Williams, struggles with pressure from her warlock brother Adam, played by Bruce Kimmel, to embrace her witchly heritage, and how to break the news to her mortal boyfriend Cliff, portrayed by Archie Hahn. Written by Ed Jurist, this pilot was nothing more than a remake of the Bewitched pilot, along with gags taken from other Bewitched episodes, and ultimately not picked up as a series by ABC. However, not giving up on the idea, Bewitched writer Jerry Mayer was approached by executives at Columbia Pictures Television to write another pilot, which would be broadcast the following year on May 7th, 1977. This time, Tabitha, spelled with an I, after receiving a respectable Nielsen rating and better reviews, the series was picked up by ABC to premiere in the fall of 1977.
They called me, I can't even remember the guy, and said, would you like to do a pilot about Tabitha? And I said, absolutely. And the way in was I wrote a spec script for Bewitched. And in those days, actually a guy from St. Louis said, I know the producer. And I can't even remember his name now, but you know, if you want to write a spec script. So I wrote a spec script, and Bill Asher bought it. They took spec scripts and paid him, I mean, it was like $1,000 or $1,500 for the script in those days. And I wrote it with a friend of mine named Paul Friedman. And it was fun. We used to go, we wrote 2 or 3 together, and I think I wrote around 6 of them total, Bewitched. And Bill Asher would have us come to his Beverly Hills mansion. And I remember we would see Elizabeth come down the stairs and all that. And so it gave me great pleasure when I hired Bill Asher to direct 2 Tabithas.
The title role went to 20-year-old blonde Lisa Hartman, though not the first choice for the role. Producers wanted to cast another brunette, actress Pam Dauber, but ultimately went with Lisa, who more closely resembled Elizabeth Montgomery and adopted similar mannerisms. Lisa, hailing from Houston, Texas, had signed a record deal with Kirshner Records, which brought her to Los Angeles, and had appeared on an episode of Policewoman and in the TV movie Murder at the World Series. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times in 1977, she stated, "I came out here to make records and tour. I never really thought about doing a series." And in referring to Tabitha coming down to herself and Pam Dauber, she stated, "She got the hit and I got the stiff." Also in the cast, fresh off a stint on All in the Family, was veteran actor Mel Stewart as KXLA producer Marvin Decker. And Robert Urich as Tabitha's boss and TV host Paul Thurston.
Robert Urich died way too young. God, what a great guy he was. We loved him. And I read about him, and he was a football star. And worked so much. He had some big shows that he was a regular in. Anyway, we all miss him. What a easy guy to work with.
And his wife died kind of recently too.
Yeah.
I read that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Bob also was a singer, and his brother and I did some concerts, as you say, together. And so I got to know him through his brother and his sister-in-law. And they were just well folks from, would you say they're from the Midwest? Where did you say they were from? They went to college. He went to college somewhere.
Yeah, I forgot. He is from the Midwest. I read about where he was from.
He was a good friend. He was good. I mean, he was a good friend to have on the set. He just was full of life. We would go out afterwards.
Yeah.
Drink, or I'd go over to his house and we'd sit and we'd chat. I remember when I bought my house, first home I ever bought, and the last. He was sitting in his house with his arm up on the back of a couch, looking out into his backyard. And I said, "Oh, Bob, I got a home. Oh my God, I bought a home." And he just said, "Look out there." He says, "As we're speaking, things are destroying my house." He said, "Every day you will have something that will destroy your house. So don't get so excited about it."
Fire or termites?
All of it. Termites, things would break down, the roof would leak. He was enumerating all those things. I won't. Bob.
David ANKRUM was cast in the role of Tabitha's brother Adam, who in this series was mortal like his father, and discouraged Tabitha from using her witchcraft, much to the chagrin of overbearing Aunt Minerva.
Well, I remember I was doing some improv theater, I think at the Hollywood Canteen, maybe. We had a little group, Hervé Villachez and Betty Thomas, and an actor named David Arkin. We were 3.5. It was a little improv show. And I think somebody had mentioned to me that they were casting this show, and maybe you might be right for this Adam part. You might try to get your agent to, but I got an interview. I think I read for Sally Powers maybe, or Alan Arado. I went up the chain, and finally tested at ABC. Trying to remember that test. It almost felt like I was on a stage or something. And there was, I was lucky. It was the first series I'd only done, I was doing more guest star work and a lot of theater. I was part of that theater arts program in Los Angeles. It was a federally funded program, 1975 to 79. We toured parks and prisons and did also, clown shows, improv. It was one of those jobs where you could go off and do your work, come back and do a show in the park, and that was great. It was great fun. I think that's, you hear about an interview, you hear about a role, and it was the actors were kind of networking back then and helped each other out. So, here's a role you might be right for. So
cool. Karen Morrow rounds out the cast as Aunt Minerva, who constantly tries to get Tabitha to kick up her heels and use her powers to their full advantage.
Can you remember the name of the director when we had to do a rain scene on top of the TV studio? Because Tabitha was asked to become the weather girl. She was asked to be, so everything had to be perfect. So she asked me to go up there and fool around with the weather. And so I don't remember the director. I had to go to another set. And he was watching the monitor, and I was supposed to go up there and cue the rain, and it was going to come like right down next to me or something like that. So when I got up there, he said, no, go to the right. And I said, your right or my right? Go to the right. Go to the right. Okay. So I went, and of course, I got in the downpour and everything. But we had to stop the show. So I could go get dried off. They had to dry my clothes. I had to get in makeup again and hair and all that stuff. He was a funny guy. He was a real funny, kind of erratic guy. I always thought of him as like, one of those people.
Added to the cast was Penelope Willis as Tabitha's childhood friend, Nancy Kravitz, allowing the opportunity for guest stars Sandra Gould and George Tobias to reprise their Bewitched roles as Nancy's Aunt Gladys and Uncle Abner. Another Bewitched alumni included Bernard Fox in his role as Dr. Bombay, and many familiar faces such as Dick Wilson, Cliff Norton, who also served as the announcer in the opening credits, Fritz Feld, Hollis Irving, Billy Hayes, Mary Grace Canfield, and John Fiedler. Mary Wicks appeared as Cassandra, head of the Witches' Council, as well as Fred Willard, Tracy Reed, Werner Klemperer, Dak Rambo, Rod McCary, Barry Van Dyke, and Richard Libertini. But due to preemptions, poor publicity by ABC, and a general change in the type of programming that viewers were drawn to in the late 70s, Tabitha failed to catch on, and ABC pulled the plug after 12 episodes, with the final first-run episode airing on Saturday, January 14th, 1978. 9 episodes were rebroadcast during July and August of 1978, after which Tabitha disappeared from the airways, occasionally showing up on cable networks like TV Land. The series is currently running in remastered 4K on the CTV network in Canada. Okay, welcome back, and we're going to continue with our Tabitha episodes. We're going to move on to episode number 7, The Arrival of Nancy. Mike's going to take this one. This was originally broadcast on December 17th, 1977. It was written by George Yanuk and directed by William Asher. Tabitha's naive girlfriend arrives in Hollywood full of unrealistic expectations. Take it away, Mike.
That's all I get? Okay. Nancy Kravitz shows up at KXLA and has decided that she's run away from home, which is Auntie Gladys Kravitz. And she wants to become a movie star and rents an expensive Rolls Royce. But then the Kravitzes show up and say, you know what, you're coming home. And they managed to convince Gladys, 2 days, find a job, and then you're all right. So Nancy gets a job at a massage parlor and gets arrested, and Tabitha manages to talk them out of it, and they also manage to talk Gladys into relenting and letting Nancy, make her own way in LA, because she did, in fact, get a job like she promised, and Nancy becomes a meter maid at the end. And so that Nancy does sort of succeed in that way. Now, in terms of storyline, there's lots of continuity stuff because, first off, Nancy Kravitz. Now, we know that in the original show, Gladys always had nephews hanging around. She never had a niece, as far as we knew. That's not to say she couldn't. But in my thought, for Nancy to be a Kravitz, she has to be Abner's niece, not Gladys's. Otherwise, she'd be a Gruber or whatever, whoever a Gruber happened to marry. So that doesn't work for me. The other thing that Tabitha said that Nancy was her favorite childhood friend. We all know Tabitha didn't have any friends. # free Tabitha, remember? But Tabitha also says that Nancy was the only kid on the block who would play with her, and we never saw Nancy at all. So, unless this happened during the gap, I find that hard to believe. Poor Adam gets 2 scenes with Nancy, but very few lines. At the outdoor restaurant scene, he gets 1 line. Again, Adam criminally underused. I liked when Tabitha popped into the dealership and he says, "Where did you come from?" And she says, "Connecticut." That was a nice throwback. Although she did pull a Sheila Summers on the dealer by making him twirl around without the help of Gaylord the dog. Just one of many sight gags that Tabitha, borrowed from Bewitched. And then they canceled Nancy's contract, but never actually got the money back, which was the whole point. During Gladys's visit to the apartment, she says, "This is the thanks I get for raising you." It's like, when did you raise her? Because she would have had to have been around during Tabitha's childhood, and she wasn't. Gladys and Minerva obviously know each other because they're very bitchy and sarcastic with each other, which is fun. But how do they even know each other? I wish they would have established that. Of course, Gladys sees something strange when Minerva zaps up a torch. But this time, instead of take your medicine, Gladys, it's take your pills. We've reduced down to pills. Of course, poor Abner gets shuffled off to the balcony and doesn't get much else to do, just like Adam. At the station, this makes me smile every time, and I guess it's just because it's the home team, where the cop says, "First gay rights, now child lawyers." I mean, it was pretty ballsy, I thought, for them to even mention that on the show. Yes, it was done as a kind of an eye roll joke, sarcasm thing, but still, we got some rep. The only thing that was weird about that is Tabitha gives this little speech about how naive Nancy was, and they let everyone go. I'm sure Nancy was probably the only one who was actually innocent in there. Abner has a neat line where he says, "I don't believe my hearing aid, you're admitting you're wrong," which I don't know, that just was somehow a layer of their marriage we never got on the original show. And then the thing that connects to the pilot is it ends with Paul having somebody parked in Paul's space at the station, and the whole thing began with Paul parking in Tabitha's spot at the very beginning. So I thought that was kind of a neat full circle bit. So that's what I got for you for the arrival of Nancy.
I've got a couple things.
Yeah, go ahead.
The guest stars, I thought Fred Willard, who had just a little teeny tiny part in the very beginning, I thought that was so cool. And of course, John Fiedler, who played on several episodes of Bewitched. It was so really cool to see him.
I just have to say, I hated seeing John Fiedler playing that massage parlor owner. He's such a cute little guy, and he played such cute little guys on Bewitched. I hated seeing him being this pervert.
He kind of looked like he could be kind of slimy. All right, anything else on this one? All right, let's move on to episode number 8, Tabitha's Triangle. And Anna is going to take this one.
Yeah.
It was broadcast on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1977. Again, it was written by George Yannock, and this one was directed by Murray Golden. And Paul's ego takes a beating when Tabitha dates a slick politician. It's all yours, Anna.
It was interesting to me that this involved politics. There's only a few episodes of Bewitched that did that. So I think it was a sign of the 70s. They also had the environmentalist coming in. And I like to think about the purpose of stories and what the considerations were. And my idea of why this show is how it is that Bewitched probably had a lot of teenage girls watching it, and they wanted to appeal to them by doing this career girl dating thing. I would have loved to have seen Tabitha date a warlock. I think that would have been a lot of fun. And what I think is one of the most interesting lines in the whole part is when the woman speaking to the politician says she doesn't vote, and Tabitha says, "Well, you need to vote," sort of the variation of like, well, you can't complain if you don't work, and this is a great privilege. And so I feel like it's interesting because you see more of Tabitha's personality and originality than you do in a lot of other places. She's worried about her job, she's worried about guys, but this is where you see see something that's really important to her. So that was really interesting to me. And there is a lot of harassment at the job, but it reminds me a little bit of Parks and Recreation too, that, okay, it's the 70s, they're going to have all this harassment, but there's also a lot of camaraderie at the job, which I really like a lot. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, I think the truth spell thing from Bewitched, Minerva puts the spell on the watch and it gets dropped into the flowers. Yeah, and I think Robert Urich, he's hilarious in that scene where he's the one who ends up with the truth spell, and he talks about, oh, did you know all these teeth are capped? Next, let's move on to episode number 9, that new black magic. June is going to take this one, and this was the first episode of the 2 episodes that were broadcast on December 31st, 1977, New Year's Eve. This one was written by Robert Stambler and directed by Herb Wallerstein, which he worked on Bewitched, I believe. A beautiful witch, played by Tracy Reed, turns Marvin into a swinger, much to his wife's chagrin. You take it away.
Okay. So it's just another day at KXLA television. Marvin's talking to Paul and Tabitha, and it's his and Lorraine's 20th anniversary, although he says they've at least had 10 years of marital bliss. But Tracy Reed as Portia shows up, and you find out that she's this beautiful witch that Tabitha went to high school with. And I want to point out that she is wearing this golden calf necklace, and I'm sure it has some symbolism that people are supposed to bow down and worship her, because I'm pretty sure that's probably what it meant. Well, she then meets Marvin, and she gets this little crush on him, as she calls him her Papa Bear. I'm sure she probably sees him as a fun challenge. Tabitha tries to stop her by showing her powers and only moves a chair, which I thought was really lame, because Portia counteracts with moving all the furniture at once. So, that's gotta be something. Portia then appears in Marvin's car, and she tricks him into taking her to his hotel. And when she puts on this extremely sexy outfit and tries to seduce him, Marvin freaks out and leaves, really quick. But, she's not done, because she wants her Papa Bear. So she puts the spell on this velvet sports coat with fashionable gold trim, and when Marvin puts it on, he turns into this swinger. Tabitha figures it out, and Paul decides to selfishly help as they go to the Dirty Disco. Great name. Tabitha makes his coat smoke, so he'll take it off, and she thinks the spell will be broken. But it doesn't matter, because Portia has him hooked. So Lorraine catches them, then she storms off. Tabitha goes over to Lorraine's house when Aunt Minerva shows up and thinks that the only way a husband won't cheat on his wife if she makes herself beautiful for him. And I'm not even going to touch that right now. Let's not even talk about that. But Lorraine thinks it's a lot of fun, even after she sees Minerva doing magic and they just kind of explain it away because of mirrors. I don't know where the mirrors are, but you know what I mean. Then Tabitha remembers that Portia does not have a sense of humor, and if she's made the butt of a joke, she can't keep up the spell. So Minerva sends Lorraine over to Marvin's office wearing this same groovy gold lame jumpsuit that Portia is wearing, and Marvin is wearing the latest fashions of a hot pink suit and sporting this brand new afro. When Lorraine and Marvin see each other, they both start laughing hysterically and can't stop because they look so ridiculous. So Portia gets really mad and just leaves, saving their marriage, and it ends with Marvin bringing in another woman to the office, and you're like, what's up with this? But you find out she's a minister and wants to renew their wedding vows. So all is saved. Oh. So I thought this was a very cute episode. Tracy Reed is just beautiful, and she does that part really well. But I wonder why she even put the spell on the sports coat when she could just snap her fingers and have him follow her in the first place. So I was thinking that was a little strange. But This is definitely a 1970s episode with the disco and the clothing and all the fashions and the hip fashions. And but I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
When Portia first arrives and Tabitha realizes, who she is, she's like, she knew her from high school. They were cheerleaders in high school. So Portia was a witch. So somewhere in there, did they decide to send Tabitha to a witch school or
was Portia going to
enchantress school or something?
Another high school.
It was integrated.
Something. All right, so let's move on to episode number 10. What's Wrong with Mr. Right? And this one is Kate. And this episode was the second episode broadcast on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1977. This one was written by Jerry Mayer and directed by George Tyne. Minerva encourages a warlock to divert Tabitha's attention from her new beau. So take it away, Kate.
All right, thank you. So I think that this episode was really reminiscent of a lot of things that we saw on Bewitched. Like we often saw Endora pull in warlocks to try to tempt Samantha. I think that it is interesting that so much of the show was focused on Tabitha dating someone, anyone, warlock, mortal, whoever. I had a great time. This was actually my first time watching Tabitha, so it was really fun to kind of like tap in and see what it was all about. I didn't really know what to expect, but I had a great time with this episode. I think that I kind of left out getting a fun one to focus on. I loved the commercial and the jingle and like Tabitha getting thrown into this role of like, now I'm going to be a cheerleader and I'm going to perform. The magic when she like breaks the tape recorder so that they're moving in slow motion and then really quick I wasn't exactly sure how that magic worked, but it was kind of funny to watch. And I feel like the end scene ties into what we were talking about, how it's all about dating, because the big thing is Monty, who is the warlock that Minerva is trying to get Tabitha to date. His calling card is a red rose. So at the end of the episode, Minerva and Tabitha are like sitting on the couch and they're talking about Tabitha's like, I'm single and free and I'm gonna date whoever I want, and then all of these other flowers start popping in and it's like all of these warlock calling cards coming to her. So it's like a different flower represents a different warlock who's like, I guess, throwing his hat in the ring to date Tabitha. I thought it was fun. I had a good time. It was it was charming. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay. Anybody have any comments?
I just like the very end. You were just talking about with the little flowers appearing. It just kind of ran the gamut of all the classic Bewitched sound effects, and the bird of paradise and all the different flowers that showed up, and then the one showed up on her chest. And I'm like, oh, he's clever.
That was the only good thing about that scene to me, was the sound effects. I just didn't really like that scene that much.
The sound effects are everything.
I think the episode was doing the pizza jingle. I think that was to give Lisa the opportunity to sing, and we probably, if the show had gone on, we probably would have seen more of that. All right, so now we're going to move on to episode number 11, Paul Goes to New York. And Eru is going to take this one. And this one was broadcast on January 7th, 1978, written by Bernie Kahn and directed by Charles Rondo. Tabitha's out to remove the gossip columnist who replaced Paul as host of the talk show. So that's the extent of that description. So go ahead, Eru.
Yes, I I think this episode was very Hollywood, but Bewitched was a story about East Coast, although they filmed in Los Angeles. But especially this Paul Goes to New York episode, you can see how industry works in Hollywood, how contracts are important. And I love these industry episodes talking about how celebrities really are behind cameras, or about casting, gossiping, and dark side of fancy industry. And in my very personal opinion, I was a bit disappointed Mary Grace Kinfield didn't play Harriet Kravitz. She was an amazing actor, and she appeared as Harriet for 4 times on Bewitched, so it would be funnier if she played same character, especially Gladys, Abner, and Nancy Kravitz appeared on this series. And for other characters, am I the only one who felt Aunt Minerva has been stalking Tabitha? It's just, Aunt Minerva is beautiful and smart, and I think she should enjoy her life more than constantly meddling her niece. But I'm sure because Tabitha is such a sweet person, and that's why she's caring about her, so she just can't ignore. But I just felt so funny. And when Marvin brought a Jewish cake because Paul quit so suddenly and he couldn't find appropriate cake, Tabitha made a good luck Paul cake with her magic. And anybody realized when the audience said, "Ah," it was a very, very small voice, but when she saw the cake. And I felt that too, and I would be really upset if my coworker quit suddenly and then announced in public before telling the coworkers. So this episode showed how sweet Tabitha is, and she calls him jolly good fellow, but I would say she's the one. Tabitha is the one really good. Jolly good fellow. Yes, jolly good fellow.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this one?
I love this episode. Barbara Sharma, who most people will know from Laugh-In, was so good and so catty, pun intended. But she was perfectly cast in this episode. And yeah, it would have been really cool that they would have tied something with Mary Grace Canfield together. I thought this episode also really went into the dynamic of Tabitha and Paul's relationship, because they kind of got hot and heavy, and then Nancy kind of broke it up. But yeah, I could definitely see that's where the series was headed, and had the show kept going, we would have gotten the Darren and Samantha eventually, because that's what they were building up to, for sure.
Yeah, I think, and the scene with Karen Morrow and Barbara Sharma, where Minerva pops in and she's talking about wearing the off the rack dress and all that. that was so good.
Really good.
Have you ever seen? I know it was the '70s, but have you ever seen a cheesier game show set?
Oh God,
awful.
Even Paul Thurston's set on the show with the sparkly letters that you would get at the dollar store now.
Yeah, that was great compared to that game show set. That was
it was bad. It was bad. Make a pile.
Yeah, a pile, all right.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, anything else on this one? All right, so we're going to move on to the final episode number 12. This is one of my favorites. I think this is where, I think with this episode, I think the show was getting really, really good, and then it's canceled. So we're going to go on to episode number 12, and that's Tabitha's Party. David's going to take this one. This aired on January 14th, 1978. written by Martin Donovan and directed by Charles Rondo. A love potion meant for Tabitha misses its target.
So this is one of my all-time favorites out of the whole Tabitha 12 episodes. But I agree, it's where Tabitha, the series, was really starting to come into its own, and it makes me sad that it ended where it did, but this was a great episode to end on. We get the return of Mary Wicks as Cassandra, the head of the Witches' Council, and she pops in with a metal peacock, I think it was, as a present for Samantha and Darren for their 25th wedding anniversary, which in reality, they would have only been married for 13 years, but I do like the idea that the Witches' Council decided that their mixed marriage was working, but I did think it was ridiculous that they decided that once a year a witch was going to have to marry a mortal. That felt like forced, but that's what drove the episode. It was quite similar to Bewitched season 4's Once in a Vial, where Rollo shows up with his love potion and spikes the champagne, which then causes Endora to fall in love with the client. And also season 6's Make Love Not Hate, when Dr. Bombay's love potion falls into the clam dip, which is exactly what they did in this episode. And I also noticed that Paul double dipped in the dip, and it disgusted me because he dipped it in for Nancy and she licked it off, and then he dips it in again. It was disgusting. And that's another thing. Nancy's back, and I thought it was funny that she fell in love with Paul and they were going to get married. And then Dick Wilson is back, and it's hilarious when Cassandra and Minerva pop in, and then Minerva puts it on him like, "Where did you come from? We were just standing here." So funny. And then, of course, it's the second episode with Dr. Bombay, and he has his hot nurse with him, and then it turns out with a twist that this nurse is actually immortal. And so we also find out that Dr. Bombay's first name is Hubert, and I absolutely hate that. But all in all, I really like this episode, and I think that had it gone on, that Tabitha really could have probably lasted 2 or 3 seasons if it had been given a chance and not been preempted by Fish of all shows. You got to be kidding me. I would have been furious to know that Fish took the place of Tabitha. Like, tonight's the first time I knew that, and that's ridiculous. So anyway, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I always pictured Dr. Bombay as having a name like Basil or Cyril or something like that. Hubert, I don't know where they came up with Hubert, but and another thing that I don't know if anybody noticed, when Cassandra zaps up the thing to make the potion, she's using a first season I Dream of Jeannie bottle.
Noticed it.
So they must have had that in the prop department or something, hanging around the prop department, and they just grabbed it and, we'll use this. So, yeah. Anybody have anything else on this episode?
I thought comedically, there was a lot of funny lines. Dick Wilson had a couple of really funny lines. One line that I loved when Cassandra and Minerva are sitting there, and basically Minerva's trying to change the subject away from Paul and Tabitha getting together, and she's like, "Oh, this is lovely witch's brew. Did you brew it yourself? Who has time? It's instant." It's really funny.
And I like the part where the girl eats the dip, and Dick Wilson is standing there, and she's like, "Let's go to your place." He goes, "If I can only remember where it is." I love that episode. I really love that episode.
And Marvin staring at himself in the mirror. Interesting twist to have somebody fall in love with themselves.
All right. Let's take a quick break, and we will be back with our season finale, Tabitha.
clothes, and Tabitha has certain looks. She has her work outfits, which is usually like sort of plain pants and a cute top. She has her work uniform. She's not the most interesting dresser. She has her work uniform, and then most of the time the Tabitha sort of uniform is jeans and a red top. She has a bunch of variations about that. She's trying to come across as the all-American girl. So this episode is interesting because when it starts, Tabitha is wearing what I think is the cutest outfit the entire season. These pants with a design and hot pink outfit. She really stands out there a lot more than she usually does. So then when she hooks up with the politician, I mean, he doesn't like her clothes that much, but she's actually dressed more conservatively than ever. I mean, she has this real plain dress that she's wearing at their first political event, and she has her hair back in these kind of boring clips, which is, I don't know, maybe it doesn't look like a political wife to him, but it's more sedate than usual. And then in the next scene with him, she really goes full on drab and is dressed in practically a Pat Nixon type outfit, just this white suit and skirt. And so she goes through this cycle of starting off looking great, which I think could be why she caught his attention in the first place. Then she kind of goes really sedate. And in the last couple scenes, she is back to pants and a cute blouse, kind of her work uniform. So I see it as Tabitha experimenting with different styles and then going back to where she's really comfortable.
Well. Having fun, I see. Look at you sitting there like a watched pot. You need to get out and boil. For your information, I am having fun. I'm reading the Bewitched history book by David L. Pierce, which contains information on all 254 episodes of Bewitched with episode descriptions, reviews, and trivia, and also ties in the events of the times with each episode. Available from Bear Manor Media. Well, that does sound like fun. Guess I'm not needed this time, but I'll be back. No doubt.
Hi, everybody. Hi, how are you? I'm so glad that I could be here with you all. You know, I've often said that I had the best job in the world. I got up in the morning and I went to this wonderful sound stage with these amazing people, and we made magic all day. I mean, what a great job. I don't know, I just felt so blessed. I was pretty much the new kid on the block, and working with Mel and David and Bob and Karen. Karen was our sunshine. That smile and that energy, and oh my gosh, she was amazing with me. All the cast and crew were. I don't know. We would go to work and we would laugh and we would, collaborate and work on these characters. And I remember being about midway toward the end of an episode, and we would see the producers come on the soundstage and they'd have a stack of scripts, and we were so excited to get the new script to see where the characters were going to go and what was going to happen with all of them. And the big question was, who are our guest stars? We had so many amazing people. I mean, there are just too many to name, but a few. I mean, Bernard Fox and Fred Willard and Mary Wicks, who I think I was a little intimidated by. She was bigger than life, but she was amazing, so sweet. But she was quite the presence on our set. Anyway, I look back on all of that, and I can't believe we're here tonight talking about it. It's wonderful. A big takeaway for me, and I'm sure many others, was Bill Asher. When he agreed to do our pilot, we were thrilled beyond belief, of course. And he was the real deal. He was Bewitched. And he came to the set and knew how to do it and knew how to make it work and make it run, and it was seamless, and we couldn't learn enough from him. Everyone, the cast and the crew and all of our different departments and props and the technical people, and he just couldn't have been more generous. And I think, we wrapped up and we took all that we learned from him, which was quite a lot, and we were on our way. So I think the best thing to do, I'm getting a little emotional, it's a new year, is we should toast. I'd like to toast. Cheers. Happy New Year, everyone. Well, I think it's time for me to grab my hat and disappear. Oh, bat! Wrong hat.
I thought we talked about the witchcraft.
Okay, we did. I'm sorry, honey. Okay. Let me try this again. Much better. Love to you all. Happy New Year.
And love and magic to you all.
Okay, so now we're gonna go through really quick.
Very quick.
Very quick. Go through, just give a couple of little thoughts about the whole series, and we're gonna rate it from 1 to 4 stars. We'll go back at the end, and we will average it out and see what the overall rating is for Tabitha. So let's just start with David.
Okay, so I think that my review of it's getting skewed by having met all the Karen and David, but before then I probably would have gave it a 1 star. But the more that I watch it, I'd give it 2. It's cute, but it's got some problems.
Okay, Kate, how about you?
I think that it's very well intentioned, but I think that it misses the mark and doesn't quite have all of the charm of Bewitched, so I missed that. But I think there are some good things, so I'm going to give it a 2.5.
Okay, Max.
Okay, I agree with David, really. I just find it very disappointing. I think if I'd watched it when I was a kid, I probably would have liked it even more now. I know that sounds really daft, but I just think it's nostalgia and I like that. But to me, the best thing about it is the fact that it's linked to Bewitched. LISA Hartman plays a brilliant role. She tries to be Elizabeth Montgomery, which is great in a good way. I think the role of Adam could have been explored a lot better. And I wish that Sam and Darren appeared in it at some point, but obviously that wasn't meant to be. So I give it 1.5.
So June, what are your thoughts?
Well, I really loved the characters, and I really, had a big crush on Robert Urich, and I think that's where my love for him started. But I'm going to give it a 3 because it was fun.
Anna.
It was fun. LISA Hartman was great. I think there were a lot of good parts, but it just didn't come together entirely, and parts of it were a letdown. I think it could have gotten a lot better, but we have what we have, so I'm going to give it a 2.
Okay, Susan.
I enjoyed LISA Hartman. I enjoyed Robert Urich. I adore Karen Morrow. She is just... She does stalk, but she's brilliant. And she reminds me a lot of Carol Burnett. I don't know if anybody else thought that. But she really is the thing that keeps it exciting to me. I wish Adam had a bigger part, but I loved seeing all the guest stars from the episodes and having them pop in. So I'm going to give it a 2.5.
All right. And John.
So my take on it, given that the star power, Elizabeth Montgomery was not interested in doing anything with it. Dick Sargent, same place. So you didn't have that magic. So they had what they could work with, I guess. And they brought out so many good elements. They brought out so many of the original characters and the stars. And it's the only witch show that had ties to Bewitched, where they utilized the original sound effects, and that was always very magical to me. So I don't think anybody will be surprised. I'm going to give this a 4.
I'm not surprised. All right, and Mike.
It was sort of like Three's Company meets Bewitched. It had its moments. There were some really funny lines and some interesting twists on the old witchy standbys. But I found the series itself very inconsistent. Karen Morrow is a joy. Of course, Lisa Hartman's great, but Karen really, really stood out. She just loved doing what she was doing, you could tell. There were really only about 2 or 3 of their own sound effects, which were all kind of lame, really. Would have been nice to kind of have their own. And again, Adam, criminally underused, #free Adam. He was only ever in business meetings. He never had his own subplot. He was a legacy character. He should have been right up there with Tabitha. I know her name is on the show, but he should have been right there. He wasn't even in episode 9, and the only mini arc he had was falling in love with Cassandra in the last episode. So, and then they didn't even come back to him after the spell was off. So, I'm gonna give this 2.5.
All right. Taylor.
I love all the women's performances. I think they do a great job. I find the relationship between Tabitha and Minerva really lovely. You don't get to see an aunt niece relationship that often. And I like the idea. I love the scene where Minerva puts her sex scene on Tabitha's television set. That's really funny. Totally agree. Adam is not well used. He's not a motivational character. There's not enough magic in the show, and ultimately the thing that fails the most about it for me is there's really no message. There's no thesis statement. It doesn't have that same kind of underlying need that Bewitched did. But I do love a failed series. Love watching failed shows. So I'm giving this a 2.
All right, Eru.
I really enjoyed watching the series. And I think LISA HARTMAN BLACK was absolutely amazing and beautiful and perfect for this role. And I loved her smile so much. My only complaint was Tabitha does not have any conflict about her identity. So to be honest, I wanted to see her weak points a little bit more. So I will give 3 stars.
All right, so now we'll go to Robert.
Overall, very 70s, cutesy. I thought they could have done more with the series. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a second season. I'm with Susan and Taylor. I just don't think it had the heart that Bewitched did. The message, the mission statement was, get Tabitha hooked up with a man, which was a little weak and kind of, counter to her, who her character was supposed to be. So I'll go with a 2.5.
Okay, so finally me. I really enjoyed it. I love Lisa. I'm going to give this 3 stars. So we've averaged it out, and we come up with 2.5416667. So this one, we're going to round it up to 3 stars. Yay! I want to thank my co-hosts, Mike and David, and I want to thank everyone here on the panel: Kate, Max, June, Anna, Susan, John, Taylor, Eru, and Robert. And I want to make a toast. This is our season finale, so I want to thank everybody who was involved in this the past few months. I want to say thank you, and hopefully we'll come back for a second season. So
and thank you everybody for
here's,
watching.
Here's to everyone, and best twitches.
Cheers.
It could be magic. Ooh, yeah. It could be magic. Come on, baby.